Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful, for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal. And I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy and his little dog scratching at the door. Is that what that is?
Well, she's sticking around on the floor.
Okay.
She's looking for food.
Today, Bruce, we are here to talk about the possibility of Anton Slepyshev re-signing with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, this has been much discussed on Oilers Now. It's been raised a few times as a real possibility. I think we know that Ken Holland has had talks with Slepyshev's agent. I think we've heard that. And we're hearing some rumblings ourselves from our own little, we don't have tons of sources, but, we're hearing some rumblings that this is a distinct possibility. So Anton Slepyshev, we know him well, Bruce, but maybe not that well because his game's really taken off in the second half of this season in the KHL. So today we'll talk about how he's done. When we last saw him, we'll refresh everyone's memory on the Slepyshev that we all saw and knew quite well. There was a bit of a debate about him, but there wasn't a lot of angst when he left town. There was maybe a few people who thought the Oilers were losing something, but I think the general consensus was, well, good luck, Anton. You showed a flash here and there, but it's probably time for you to move on from Edmonton. This hasn't worked out. And then we'll talk about his season this year. So, Bruce, what was your assessment of him in his last season here, 2017-18?
Well, I mean, he was an easy guy to like, superficially. Like he's a big, rangy kind of guy. He's got lots of tools. Good skater, good hard shot. Flashy kind of guy can be. But it always seemed like the output was less than the sum of the parts, to mangle a metaphor. And it was, you watch the guy and then you later you say, well, geez, he only got 12 points after all that. And, he was, it was kind of a catch-22. He couldn't work his way really into the top six. He couldn't work his way onto the power play. And because he spent more time playing with guys like Mark Letestu than Connor McDavid, he only scored at sort of a very, marginal rate, 1.3 points per 60 kind of even strength scorer and nothing on the power play.
So who are his most common line mates, Bruce?
They
when
were
he was last year.
Yeah,
Lucic,
Letestu, and Lucic, and who was the third guy? Like he was Drake Kajula.
Oh, jeez, that's not exactly a recipe for success, was it?
Well, no, I mean those guys can all score like a little bit, but none of them is a real, like there's no Colin Fraser in there, or Eric Bonche. There's no, but they were bottom sixers for a reason, and I guess you could say Slepyshev was too, and they could not.
Well, that year, that 2017-18 season, Letestu was really, really weak. I mean, he was not an NHL hockey player at that point, and Lucic arguably wasn't either. I mean, there might be some disagreement in Calgary about Lucic, but man, he was just really mediocre that year. And Kajula he had a bit on the attack going on, but Drake Kajula, the entire time he was in Edmonton, just leaked scoring chances left, right, and center, because that's where that's where he wandered all over the ice in the defensive zone and was a terrible defensive winger. So with those as your most common line mates, that's a recipe for failure for any young player, I'm going to suggest. And Slepyshev maybe didn't help himself. You were saying he hurt his ankle, but Bruce, the coach also didn't help him, Todd McClellan.
No.
Slepyshev had played his best hockey in the 2017 playoffs in a line with Lucic and Draisaitl. And there had been quite a bit of optimism about him as a player heading into the year and thinking, well, maybe that line can do something. Maybe those three guys could get together. And we never I mean, I think it was like 40 games into the year before we even saw that line tried once by McClellan. And then it was like for one game. So
They played 19 seconds together. I wrote about it at the end of that year. I looked at some of these old posts in researching today's posts,
mhm.
and they played 19 seconds together in in the following year after playing in the playoffs. And in the playoffs they had some nice results. Like they didn't dominate possession or anything, but they had they scored some goals. And they had a real big game 6 against Anaheim that pushed the series to the limit. Anyway, he just never went back to it, and for whatever
Yeah.
reason, there was some aspect that he didn't like, and of course, Slepyshev wound up playing more with Lucic than he did with Draisaitl, so it didn't help him a whole lot.
Just like Puljujärvi, that was a death knell for Puljujärvi's career in Edmonton, was playing so much with Lucic last year. I mean, that was just, man, a lot of careers crashed on the rocks of Lucic Bay in Edmonton. Bruce, um, I just think so. When we look at McClellan's time as the coach in Edmonton, and I know he had his boosters and he had the one really good year. Um, there's only when I was looking at the players who I thought Slepyshev, and I looked back at the power rankings for that year, 2017,
Hmm.
18, and Slepyshev was consistently probably the worst or second worst forward in terms of my own
Right.
assessment of performance on the team. So there was only one other forward who did really poorly that year, who stepped up after McClellan left, of the guys who are still remaining in Edmonton, at least. And that gonna go deal with the dog here. That is that's Zach Cassian. So Zach Cassian was really weak under McClellan. He was in Todd McClellan's doghouse, but Zach Cassian, just talking about Zach Cassian here, Bruce. Zach
Hmm.
Cassian is the one player who stayed in Edmonton after McClellan left and who really started to excel in Edmonton after McClellan left. Now, is it possible that with a different coach and a different opportunity that Slepyshev could have turned it around in Edmonton as well? We don't have the answer to that. Although Hitchcock did take over that year, correct?
Yeah.
Or no, was it? Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
No, that was 2018,
17,
19.
18.
No, that
Yeah,
was full hit. That was full McClellan.
it was still McClellan. All of
Yeah.
Slepyshev's career here was McClellan.
So
And
maybe there wasn't a mix there, but I do think it was probably more of a his first year in Russia wasn't that good, was it, Bruce? He didn't exactly rip up the
when
KHL.
when he went back to Russia,
Yeah.
he scored 15 goals and 10 assists, which was the exact same he scored as a 20-year-old before he came over. Like he matched his boxcars at 24 that he'd done at 20, and it looked like maybe he was a spent force.
Yeah.
But in between times, the time he was here, he never did get the chance that Cassian eventually got playing in the top 6, right? Now, Slepyshev, like I don't think you can point to any one time and say that he ever got more than a couple of games here and there where he lined up and was given a real serious chance to prove that he was a top 6 NHL winger, and he probably wasn't one yet. I mean, he was probably not necessarily in the wrong slot, but he's a, evidence would suggest that at 25 he's a different player than he was at 21 and 22 and 23 as he was when he left Edmonton.
So what are we seeing this year from Anton Slepyshev that makes us think, hey, maybe there's a chance? I mean, other than the fact that the Oilers qualified. So the Oilers qualified him when he left. They
Yes.
offered him a contract. He didn't sign it,
Mhm.
but because they did
Yes.
that, they have his rights till he's
Yeah.
27. So
Mhm.
this summer is Edmonton's last exclusive
Right.
negotiating period with Slepyshev. They can sign him. They could trade his rights for a draft pick, but they have him till he's 27. This is the summer they can make something out of this. So what makes anyone think that he could come back here and succeed? What's happened with him this past year?
Well, what happened is he just exploded in the second half of the season, playing with CSKA Moscow, which is formerly Central Red Army, uh, famous franchise in Russian hockey history. And he had at the halfway point, he was scoring around the same rate that he did last year, 15 points in 34 games. And, last year he had 25 and 56, I think it was, so basically the same rate. And then all of a sudden the calendar turned to 2020 and he turned into a scoring monster. And he's played um, since in 2020. He went on immediately a 14-game point scoring streak, which tied the CSKA franchise record held by Alex Radulov, who's a well-known big scorer. He got a 0 in one game, and then he closed out the season by scoring in the last 5 games right after that. And then in the playoffs, he scored in every playoff game so far, as Red Army swept through their first round series. And in the playoffs at least, he led the team in scoring. In the regular season, he was third on the team in scoring, and but in the second half of the season, he scored as well as anybody in the whole league, I think, at the rate he was going. I mean, he was almost a point and a half per game in 2020. So he's been ripping up. Now that said, I'll plead ignorance in that. I never saw him play any games, and I don't know, what happened with his line mates in that. All I know is his ice time didn't change a whole lot. He was playing 16 minutes a game. It's not like he suddenly went up to 23 or something. And they finally decided to do, to use him differently. He But he just started to score and score and score and score. I mean, he's played 24 games this calendar 2020. He's got 35 points, plus 23. Like, they're outscoring. And so, I mean, the numbers are great, and they suggest that maybe he's turned a corner. Either that or he's just gone on a ridiculous hot roll, and he's kept it going for over 2 months.
So the only thing that gives me pause in terms of his numbers is the fact that he is on a powerhouse team.
Yep.
He's playing on the same team as 22-year-old Kirill Kaprizov, who's probably, I think, most certainly the best prospect in the KHL, best NHL prospect. I think Minnesota, let me just have a look here. He holds his rights. He's got 62 points in 57 games this year. And there's other players who score a lot on that same team. There's Lyndon Vey, the Canadian, and Mikhail Grigorenko, who was a top pick in the NHL, never panned out here. And there's a whole group of other players that are just behind that group. So this is quite an offensive powerhouse.
Yes, they're the defending champions. But when they became champions, Slepyshev was like 10th highest scorer on the team, and he wasn't like a big part of it. Now it's obvious that he is a big part of it, especially in this last part.
Let's just look. So the Oilers on the right side, Slepyshev was a right winger here, was he not, when he was here?
He's a right shot. He actually didn't mind playing left wing, but he is a right shot, so he's more a natural fit in the right side.
I think maybe in Russia, maybe they have him on the other side. I don't know. Anyway, we have Yamamoto now, Kassian, Patrick Russell, Chason plays the right side, and James Neal now plays the right side. And what's Athanasiou?
Both.
See both? Okay.
I've
Benson.
Seen him use them at both. I think primarily left. Benson's a left.
Okay. So it's not, you can see a kind of a possibility of a third line job there, not on the checking line. Like if they had a third, so he's not grind line material. Like I don't see him playing with Sheahan and Archibald on the kind of checking line that I think Tippett's going to have on this team. But there is that kind of, third, fourth line, which is another attacking line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a possibility he could beat out Yamamoto or Kassian and for the right wing spot on one of the top lines or fit in as a left wing? I mean, I think that's unlikely, but it's you never know. Kassian could be the third line winger with Sheahan and Archibald, and Slepyshev could slot up. I could see Slepyshev in the prime of his scoring career. He's right at that age, 26 next year. He's right at that age where that's your prime scoring years, and prime years as a two-way winger. I could see him beating out Chason and being a better player than Chason or Neal. I don't know if the one thing about Slepyshev, he was never used, and so we don't know. Chason and Neal are both really good net front guys on the power play. If he was to beat out one of those guys somehow, I don't know what they do with them. They're both on guaranteed contracts next year. But, could he fill that role in front of the net on the power play? I'm betting he could if he set his mind to it. And he's a big guy. I don't know if he's got the tipping, shot deflection skills, but that might be a possibility for him. But
he was
those go ahead.
he was with Russia, uh, and I'm going back to World Juniors, but he was a left circle, half wall kind of
Yeah.
one-time shooter for Russia in the. Remember during the lockout year they had the World Juniors over there in um, uh, Yakupov's part of the world, and um,
Chelyabinsk, no,
no,
Chelyabinsk.
one valley over from there. Anyway, I'll get it in a second. But he
The
was the
Russian Saskatchewan, not the Russian Alberta.
he was the captain of the Russian team, and the
Uh,
Nuge was the captain of the Canadian team. And the Nuge had been the first overall draft pick in the NHL, and Slepyshev had been the first overall draft pick in the KHL at one time. So he was a um, uh, considered to be a pretty high end talent of a player. And now, mind you, the KHL draft, when you look at the list of the KHL draft, it reminds me more of the CFL draft than anything else, where they're drafting a guy in part because of how good he is, and in part whether they think they can actually sign the guy or not. Like, there's no point in drafting the top Canadian player because he's never going to go and play in the KHL. They're so there's kind of mixed motives of how they rank, near as I can tell. But that said, to get to number one on the list, you got to be able to play, and so his lack of talent is not his issue. His takeaway
yeah.
from that.
Well, I could see the Oilers, like, why not? If your estimate for what it might cost is like about 1.5 million to 2 million a year.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I just sort of ballparked it. I mean, I'm not great at estimating money. I mean, this is an outside player coming in. So, and I compared him to Gusev, Nikita Gusev, the slightly older defending KHL scoring champion that came into the league last summer, and was at Vegas, had his rights, and traded him off to New Jersey and got a couple picks for him, and then New Jersey gave him 2 years, 4.5 million per, big money. Well, Slepyshev is not a defending scoring champion, with 2 other years in the top five scorers. Uh, and he doesn't have as much. Slepyshev's got, I'd say, less negotiating power. I think it's probably a good thing that Edmonton management's had a complete changeover in coaching since he was here. I think that would open him up the way many thought Puljujärvi might look at the team differently. I'm pretty sure Slepyshev would. And he's, he's like a very solid KHL scorer, which he was in, between 10 and 20 in goals, assists, points. He was seventh, I think, in plus minus, top 11 or something in points per game. Like, he was just on the cusp of the top 10. But when you step back, you realize that most of that came in the second half of the season. Uh, like, he pulled up from way back to get himself just outside the top 10 scorers. So I guess the question is, which Slepyshev do you think you're signing? The guy who was inconsistent throughout the year, or the guy that went nuts in the second half and maybe he's turned a corner somehow? And the question then is, of course, he turned that corner in the KHL. The NHL is a different league altogether, and what does it mean?
Yeah. Well, I could see him beating out, or competing with Chason and Neal. His problem is that all these guys he's competing with have
Mhm.
contracts for next year,
Yep.
and Neal's getting paid a lot. I don't see the Oilers buying out Neal this summer, and I see a very limited ability to move the player in a trade. Um, is it
I think
possible
I
if
think
they swallowed a poison pill that they could move James Neal this summer? I don't believe so.
I think it's a real possibility they could buy him out.
Do you?
Yeah.
There is so
I mean,
much pain.
well, I'm aware of that, but it's pain either way when you got a $5.75 million contract. And if they were to buy him out, that would give them 3.8 in cap relief. If they were to sign a player for, say, 2 million that they thought was a better player, and it would also open up, the other half of that cap relief. I mean, you could make a case for it. So Neal's got a lot of questions to answer at such a point if they get playing hockey again. He really hasn't moved the needle much since very early in this season.
I've liked him more than most people. I think he's been okay at even strength.
Mhm.
And I think he has been really good on the power play, although he hasn't. I mean, he's been injured, and then Chaseon's taken his job. I mean, Chaseon and Neal, I think, have been very comparable on the power play. And I'm just looking at the numbers today. I'm going to be writing a post on it in the coming up. But let me just go to the cap-friendly buyout calendar on James Neal.
Yeah, it would be 1.9 million a year for 8 years, or pretty much. Because he's got 4 years to go
Geez.
on that son of a gun.
Yeah, I think you need to. I think you need to go one more year
Well,
with him before you, because I mean, he's a guy who would have scored 20 goals this year of the season.
mm-hmm.
Did you see Eric
Yeah, we had
Francis
about
on Twitter
14
was
of them on October 31st.
Eric Francis on Twitter was whining that the NHL needs to prorate James Neal's numbers so Calgary can get that third round draft pick.
This is the same guy that's been putting down James Neal all year long, and now all of a sudden he thinks they should be prorating his numbers to project how good he is. Okay, Eric.
I don't think that's
He
gonna.
might. I mean, we're fan. I guess we shouldn't criticize, but man, he's the pom poms on that guy are a bit
Well,
hard hard to swallow.
we're
We're
openly
fans. Like I'm a
our
fan
pom
blogger.
poms.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
apologize for it,
yeah.
but sometimes you wonder some of the
Okay.
water that gets carried for.
Oh, I don't blame him for speculating on it.
I guess he knows his audience, eh? Just like we do.
Buyout length, Bruce. Okay, after this year, he's got
Uh,
3 years remaining.
okay, 3 more years. That's right.
6 years at
Well,
1.9 million. So if you go one more year with James Neal, which I think they will do, I don't think they're going to buy him up. But we'll dig into this. We'll have lots of time to speculate on this kind
oh,
of thing. It looks like. Um, I think that they'll wait another year, at least, to buy out James Neal. So we'll see what
anyway,
happens.
to get Slepyshev, I mean, the first thing is you might say, well, bring the guy back and let him compete for a job. But well, I think we're past that. I mean, he makes 90 million rubles to play in the KHL. And that's a lot of rubles. And it's even a fair amount of dollars. It translates to about $1.25 million. So he isn't going to sign a $900,000 contract to come back over here. He's going to want a raise based on the great second half that he's had. And he's probably open to taking that raise from Central Red Army or uh, to consider, I'm not sure how much his drive is to play in the NHL or just simply to boost his status. I mean, there are guys, the aforementioned Alex Radulov being a great example, who are sort of equally comfortable playing in one league or the other. So it's not like the Oilers have him over a barrel, but if he does want to come back here, then they're the team he has to talk to first. And maybe there's a fit. I mean, could they use a big rangy winger with a great shot who can score points at anything approaching that rate? Absolutely. Could they ever? So, but we
Yeah.
have in 3 years together, he played with Connor McDavid something like 126 minutes. And in that time, the Oilers scored 9 goals, and Slepyshev himself got 5 points. So it wasn't like he couldn't score with McDavid. It was just they never stuck with it as a trial for any length of time. So we have a minimal amount of information suggesting that he can play with the guy, but that's all we've got.
Well, we've got what do we have? We've got McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Yamamoto. 4 guys who
Mm-hmm.
can play in the top 6 for sure. We've
Mm-hmm.
got another one in Cassian, who's a pretty good bet to play in the top 6. So there's one guy. There's one more opening there.
Mm-hmm.
It's wide open, really wide open at this point. And Slepyshev would seem to me as good a bet, if not a better bet, than James Neal or Alex Chason to
Tyler
fill that.
Ennis.
Well, there's Tyler Ennis. There's
There's
Tyler Benson.
Alex Athanasiou. There's
There's
guys.
yeah. Well,
The question is, do you
Athanasiu
think
is
he's
very
an upgrade? Because to get Slepyshev here, you're not saying come in to compete for a job. It's that we're paying you X amount of dollars and you're on the team.
Well, how'd you like to have a kind of a third scoring line, attacking line, which the Oilers have, with Athanasiou and Slepyshev as the wingers, and maybe someone else that we don't know of at center. So that's a possibility too. So that will be the other job he's competing for. But again, he's in tough because both Chase on and I don't see them buying out Chase on, and excuse me, and Neal are around. But you never know what happens. Well, Bruce, so we should just say to fans that we're going to be going at the Cult of Hockey. That I'm going to be preparing a series of posts with the hope that the playoffs. I don't think the regular season's going to. I think that's it for the regular season play, is my guess. But I'm still hoping that the playoffs happen, and we're going to be writing series of posts as if that was going to happen. And we're going to be starting player reviews for you. You're going to be looking at the season that we've seen and starting to go through the list of Oilers and, summing up their season. So we got lots to write about at the Cult. And, fingers crossed, Bruce, that that things will settle down enough and health measures will be put in place that allow the season the playoffs at least to continue. All we can do is hope.
It's nice to be able to write about something approaching normalcy, player rumored to be coming over from Europe. We got one or two of those every spring, right? And sometimes they pan out, and sometimes the rumors pan out and the players don't. But it felt kind of normal, and it's strange. Like this whole week has been so strange. I found it really hard to kick into gear and try and write this darn post. And it's kind of probably not the most well put together one that I've done, but it's just kind of interesting to be actually talking about hockey and talking about a guy that's actually still playing games. This is the amazing part. The KHL playoffs is still underway, other than I understand that Jokerit just pulled out of the playoffs.
Yeah, out of coronavirus concerns.
That's a bit of an eye popper, but they're through the first round, and I think they had one or two games in front of empty barns, but they're still playing, and so this is one player. You got to call him a player of interest, Anton Slepyshev.
Yeah, and Bruce, in terms of wooing the guy, there's not only the fact that there's a new GM and a new coach here in Edmonton. There's also a record of signing players from Europe last summer and giving them a real shot.
Yes.
I mean, Gaetan Haas. 100%. Gaetan Haas played 526 even strength minutes. Nygaard played 335. Of course, was hurt. Nygaard earned another contract.
Yurcho got a chance. Granlund got a chance. They didn't all make the most of it.
None
of those guys can say they didn't get a chance.
Persson got a chance as well. He got a real chance. I mean, he was in the opening day lineup and he lost the job, as did Yurcho.
And they gave him a fresh chance with another team once they determined that he wasn't in the mix here. They basically took a bath and just moved him along just to get to sort of hold faith with the player. To me, that's a kind of sort of understated move by the GM that shows that he's a straight dealer, and I think the agents in particular would appreciate that kind of stuff.
And from an Oilers perspective, in terms of rolling the dice on all those guys, I think I really like Nygaard as a player this year. I thought he was an effective NHL player, especially on the checking line. And I really, that line played its best hockey by far when he was with Sheahan and Archibald in January. All those guys were playing excellent hockey before Nygaard got injured. So that was a real,
coming around. And
that's why they offered him a contract. Haas, I don't know, and we'll dig into this in the future when you write about Haas. We'll think about this more. I'm kind of on the fence whether he's earned another contract or not. I don't know at this point. I think it's kind of a coin flip. I don't know. We'll talk about that later in any case, Bruce. So we're going to be writing posts, people. We're going to be here and talking Oilers hockey because that's what we love to do. Right?
Fun to fantasize about it, at least. That's all we're doing right now, man. Last night when I was going through my TV channel and just see what was on, and it came up, channel 223, Islanders at Oilers, being recorded, and I'm just sort of, how am I not watching it? Oh yeah, there's no game. It's just, it just turned so suddenly.
Hey Bruce, do you have that? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say on Wednesday night I had a clash between covering the Oilers game and teaching my astronomy course at the Science Center. Now the Science Center is closed and NHL is closed. It's like everything changed.
Oh wow, I didn't know the Science Center was closed.
Yeah, they're
Everything's
shut down
closed.
for 2 weeks.
Alrighty, we'll see what happens there. Oh,
It's
I
a
was going to ask
bizarre
you,
world.
do you
Hmm.
have? I a few years ago, my brother-in-law gave me as a Christmas present this DVD of the top 10 Oilers games
Got it.
of all time. I I haven't watched it yet.
Hmm.
So what I was thinking is maybe what we could do is you and I both watch, pick
Hmm.
pick a night, we'll watch the game, and we'll
Right.
do two good things, two bad things, and two numbers podcast from the Oilers' greatest. How does that sound?
Sounds like fun.
Because I'd like to do the
I
scoring
remember looking
chances.
at the I remember looking at the game. One of them is Wayne getting his 50 and 39 games against Philly,
Yeah.
and my goodness, he must have had 20 grade A scoring chances in that game. It was
Well,
just
I
ridiculous. It was just whoa, one after another great chance. It was just
I want to
maybe
track
not
that
20, but
actually.
12 to 15.
I find it interesting to track grade A chances from different eras and
Yeah,
just
well, it'd
do it
be
for the game.
interesting to apply our methods and other methods. I mean, remember when we went through the old Canada Cup videos and we put Corsi event, we tried to count Corsi events and zone entries and just sort of look at the old footage through a modern lens. And I think, in our case, obviously the scoring chance project that you in particular have worked on for all these years would be a natural way to try and parse these games. How does the style of hockey compare with what we're seeing in the modern NHL? We know it's going to be different, but
There's
how different? How can we quantify that?
I bet you there's probably about I'm just guessing here, like 5,000, 10,000 Oiler fans who also own that video. So maybe we'll give people advance notice of the game that we're watching that night, and if they want to watch along
Okay.
that same night, but we'll see what develops. Maybe it won't get to that, but I think maybe by May, if there's still no games by May, this is what we will be turning to by then, Bruce, for our own. I've always wanted to watch those games again. I just, we're always so busy. We watch a lot of hockey,
Yep.
between the Bakersfield Condors and the World Championships, which you watch, and
Not
the
this year, I
intensity
don't
with
think.
which we watch the Oilers games. We watch a lot of hockey. I've never had a chance to watch those, so that's in the offing as well. Anyway, Bruce, thanks for
All
talking
right.
tonight. Thanks,
Yeah. Thanks for reading, everyone, and thanks for listening.
and in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.